Hi, my name is Jamal Ashraf, and I want to talk about the chapter 5 of Big Java by Mr. Horseman. So I broke this down to multiple parts. The first part, you're talking about if statement. So the book is talking about how you would go and select certain floor, and you can choose. But basically, with the if statement is you would have a condition. If this condition is true, you want to do something. If this condition is false, you want to do something else. So I go to the intersection and I get to a light. If the light is green, I pass. If the light is yellow, I pass. If the light is red, I stop. So condition, and then we're going to have the decision about what we're going to be doing. So in this case, he's talking about some conversely that some people don't like number 13. So hotels decided that not to have a floor 13, but they couldn't leave a floor empty. So what they did is they called floor 13 floor 14. So even though it's 13, people think it is 14. It's actually 13. So we can build a if statement to say that when the elevator is going up, if the floor is more than 13, we're going to deduct one floor from it. So 14 becomes 13, 15 becomes 14, and so on. Otherwise, it's going to be the exact same floor. So floor 5 is 5, and so on. In this chapter, your author is creating some flowcharts. I have seen this a lot in industry. Some people are more comfortable with this to have a visual way of where the flow of the program is. And I have seen this in some companies throughout the hallways by drawing these things on whiteboards of the huge projects. And of course, that's a long time ago. Nowadays, it's all on computer. So we start with some condition. If this condition, we put it in a diamond shape. If it's true, we're going to go this route. If it's false, we're going to go to this route. And these are the statements that we're going to be executing. So we can potentially have no else statement. So if the floor is greater than 13, we're going to deduct 1. Remember, minus minus is deducting 1 from the actual floor. So first we have to set our actual floor to floor, and then we go inside the if statement. And if it's greater than 13, we're going to deduct 1 from it. The reason we do this to eliminate the else statement. So if I put the actual floor equal floor on the top, so that means every time we come in, we're going to grab a floor, we put it in the actual. If it's 5, it's going to be 5, 6, and so on. When we hit the greater than 13, so let's say it's 14, my actual floor is going to be greater than 13, then it's going to be minus minus, so we would get 13. So I'm actually going to floor 13, thinking that is floor 14. So this image that your book has, it says, you know what, it's like you come up to an intersection, you got to choose to go to the left or right. So that's one way of thinking an if statement. So with the, let me get into this. So we can have just one if statement by itself without the else, or we can have if else. So remember, these braces can be anywhere. It can be in the same line, it can be in multiple lines, or it can omit it if it doesn't have more than one statement. So the braces are not required if you have just one statement. I am a lazy typist. I don't want to type as much as possible. So I'm choosing not to use the braces. But I have to tell you that there are some companies that you go and work for, and part of their requirement is to actually put the braces. So if my company asks me to put braces, I'm going to do it. So the condition here, we're going to talk more about it, is called a Boolean condition, meaning that whatever we have in there, and we can have more than one statement, is going to be calculated to be a Boolean, which is going to be true or false. So that the statement is going to end up being true or false. So if it's true, it's going to do the first one. And if it's false, it's going to fall into here. Either or, it cannot do both. So what can go in here? We have equal, equal, not equal, less than, greater than, greater than, greater than, less than. We're going to look at the table coming up to go through these things. Next, we're talking about we can potentially leave the else out if we want to. So we can figure out a way to move the common part outside of if. Excuse me. So we can do that. So we can eliminate the else. When we have braces, of course, you have a different convention of doing these braces. Some leave the opening braces in the same line to serve enter. And then the idea is we're going to be lining them up with the if itself. It's easier to follow. So one of the things that we're going to be working on is when we're writing the code, it's not for me and this time only, it's going to be for me and other people to come back to this code and being able to read it. Believe me, I have done my share of trying to figure out things for days at a time. And my own code was so messy that I couldn't make any sense out of it. So that's something that we're going to work toward it. One of the mistakes that we do as we're learning Java and C++, we are going to put the semicolon at the end, and we do this mental note to put semicolon at the end of everything. And then all of a sudden, we're going to put a semicolon right here after the if statement. So if we do that, that's going to terminate my if statement. Of course, compiler is going to come up and complain about this else. But if I don't have an else, this is going to terminate right there. And then it's going to go and execute the next one. So no matter what the floor is, it's always going to execute this. So be sure you're not going to do semicolon right there. So the bottom line is if the condition is true, it's going to execute this, whatever is inside these braces. It can be one line or multiple lines. Again, if it's just one line, I do not have to have braces. And if the condition is false, it's going to fall into here. And again, we can have one or more than one statements. So this is a sample of the code. It's inside your book. You can take a look at it, or you can put it in your IDE and test it. And that's basically what we have done. Couple of things. We are reading the floor number from the user. So we are building up how to create an input over here. We're checking for 13. If that's the case, we deduct 1. Otherwise, we are not deducting anything. And then we're going to display it. So for the sample 1, if I put 20, the actual floor is 19. So one of the things that we want to do is when we have an if-else statement, and later on we learn about methods and so on, we got to leave ourselves a little extra time to go over these things. So hopefully when we are doing design, we're going to catch it. But if not, we got to go back and look at our code and try to figure these things out. So we are looking for duplication in here. So these two statements are exactly the same thing. So what we can do is take it and put it outside. So it doesn't matter what the actual, if it goes to the if a statement here or if a statement here is going to have this. So any duplication, we're going to put it outside. So if it was before these things, I would have put it on the top. If it's after my statements, at the end of the statement, it's going to come on the bottom. So in this case, we move it to the bottom. Now, we're going to take a look at this one more time and say, okay, we have something else that they have in common. So they have this actual floor equal floor. So if I want to make my code more efficient, meaning that I don't want my computer to work as hard, then maybe I can take this one out too. How do I do that? I would put the actual floor equal floor out, and the difference between these two is -1, which I could potentially do minus. And you can see this is my style. I'm not using braces when I have just one statement. So we are coming up to the end of part 1. We have some self-checks here. I want you to pause this, go over it, answer it, and then we go over them in the class, hopefully. So we have some countries that they have number 14, considered as unlucky. Some building owners play it safe and skip both 13 and 14 to accommodate them. So the question is, how do you modify the code that we have to accommodate 14? Number 2 is say, consider this one. And what is the discount price for the original price of 95, 100, 105? Again, you can put a pause on it and try it out. So comparing this one with the other one, do they do the same thing or not? Consider the following statements to compute a discounted price. What is a discounted price? The original 95, 100, 105. Put that in there and calculate it by hand. So we have a fuel amount and then we have the capacity. So if the fuel amount gets to 10% of the capacity, we're going to do some kind of a warning. In this case, we're going to print out red, and otherwise we're going to print out green. So take a few minutes, go over this, write it down. I prefer you do it by pen and paper instead of doing it on the computer, or if you're doing it on the computer, just a document-wise. Okay, so that's the end of our part 1.